There's a name on this list I did not want to bring up today, but I had to. We have Brock Purdy, who we recommended last week, and he laid an egg. And we have Baker Mayfield, who's making us semi-famous on the internet. So we have these two guys to talk about. And trust me, I did not bring up Baker for the clicks. We brought up Baker because it's an interesting matchup. And a lot's changed since our last video. So right into it, Purdy versus Washington, Baker versus New Orleans. Justin, I'll let you go first. I want you to start this off because I don't want to be the guy to make a decision right away. I look like Baker. Like, I didn't shave. I look like a bum. Like, I just look like
I was pulling up these photos today, and I was like, man, Baker literally looks like a middle-aged dad. Like, he doesn't look like an NFL quarterback. It's fine. We're not talking about Baker like that. Okay, so the matchup is pretty close. I mean, Baker's not projected as many yards, but Purdy is second? Well, before this last week was second in the league in passing yards with the least amount of passing attempts. This is a pretty close matchup, even though there's a 5-point differential here. The biggest things here is Washington allows the most points against the quarterback, which is who Brock Purdy is going up against, whereas Baker goes up against the 7th toughest defense with the New Orleans Saints against the quarterback. So that's going to be tough. New Orleans allows about 15 points a game, whereas Washington allows 21. I think after the dud that Brock Purdy put up last week, the 49ers are going to have to get off to a hot start. I feel like this is Purdy's time to shine, but man, is Baker really killing it the last couple of weeks? That's the real predicament, and that's why we're talking about these two. But if I'm going with my gut right now, I'm hoping Brock Purdy plays well for 1 week, just 1 week. Give me a championship. I rode you all season here. Give me that championship. Yeah. I actually have this in a real life matchup.
So to piggyback on your Purdy analysis, we broke him down last week, and nothing's changed except for he had a 1 dud. And if you're going to go off that 1 dud and say, you know what, I'm changing quarterbacks, I'm changing directions, then you don't really know how to play. You don't know how the game works, honestly. You can't just say, hey, he had 1 bad game, time to throw it in. He's going against Washington, the perfect matchup. Like you said, they allow 21 points per game to the quarterback position, tied with Philly, actually. So they are tied with the worst passing defense against fantasy quarterbacks. Purdy threw 4 picks last week, man, against Baltimore, one of the best passing defenses in the league. Guys, elite talent can't always beat the defenses. Sometimes the defenses are elite themselves, so therefore sometimes the defenses win. I get it. It's not going to happen week in, week out. We recommend a Purdy. He laid an egg. It just happens. Commanders only have 7 interceptions on the year total. Purdy threw 4 last week against Baltimore. Baltimore actually picked off Sam Darnold too, so they had 5 picks in that game, almost catching the Commanders' season total in 1 game. That's not going to happen again. Commanders don't really commit turnovers. They don't really play hard defense, and they've kind of quit. And they have also allowed the most touchdowns given up to quarterbacks, 33 this year, the most in the NFL. Purdy is where I'm leaning to, but I do want to get into Baker real quick before we do move on. Since the 8th of December, when our video posted, Baker Mayfield has been quarterback 2. Baker Mayfield, I'll repeat that. Since we made our Dynasty podcast about Baker Mayfield, he's been quarterback 2. Before that, he was quarterback 16. Weeks 1 through 13, he was quarterback 16. Weeks 14 through now, quarterback 2. I can't make it up. I just cannot make this up. It's unreal.
Play the clip.
But he's been, you know what?
When I woke up this morning, I was feeling pretty dangerous.
So was I, Baker. So was I, because I was going to talk about you today. I will say this. In those 3 weeks where he's been balling out, he played Atlanta, Green Bay, Jacksonville. Atlanta's 19th against the pass. Green Bay 17th, which we covered Green Bay yesterday in the priority waiver show. They're actually dead last against the pass the following past 2 weeks. That defense has fallen apart. So the 17th is kind of inflated considering their most recent history. And then Jacksonville's 29th against the pass. What am I saying? Baker has played cake matchups the past 3 weeks. Baker has taken advantage of these cake matchups like he should. Congratulations. We have Groot or we have Rocket going nuts in the background. That's okay. But what I'm saying, I'm not saying Baker is a bum right now. What I'm saying is he played 3 cake matchups. Now he's going against New Orleans. New Orleans, he torched them, 23.9 points in week 4. He threw 246 yards, 3 touchdowns, 1 interception. We've seen it. we've seen Baker ball against New Orleans. Now Baker's quarterback 11 right now overall. In a year where we have no Burrow, we have no Anthony Richardson, we have no Aaron Rodgers, we have no Deshaun Watson, we have no Jimmy Garoppolo, we have no Daniel Jones, we have half a season from Kyler, half a season from Justin Herbert, and about a third of a season from Kirk Cousins. Okay, I will say this: I'm glad Baker made it this far at quarterback 11. I'm actually happy for him. But if we're talking points per game, if we're talking how players have played, Joe Flacco's averaging 21.3 points since he's been in the league. Are we crowning him? Are we saying he's going to go forward and be the next great quarterback? Or am I going to get a bunch of Cleveland fans coming after me because I'm saying Joe Flacco's not the future of their team? No. Losing Cousins means 19.3 points per game. That's what he was averaging before he left. Herbert, 18.5. Richardson, in the small sample size, 18.5. Kyler Murray, since he's been back, 18.2, all ahead of Baker Mayfield's points per game. That being said, congratulations for being quarterback 11. You should be probably around 18, 19-ish. Saints, I did a lot of research today, guys. I'm sorry. The Saints run zone defense never. Why do I bring this up? Baker is 32% or 32nd against the zone defense completion percentage. Worst. 31st passing rate versus zone. Again, second worst. He should torch the Saints because against the man-to-man defenses, he's 6th and 18th against in passing completions and passing rating. He torches man defense. Why? Why does he torch man defenses, you ask me? I don't know. There's a guy named Mike Evans there. There's a guy that's Mike Evans where he crushes man-to-man. 8th against man-to-man, actually. 45.3% win rate versus man. 26.7% of his targets come versus man defense. He's third in air yards, third in deep targets. When he's one-on-one, Baker has no problem throwing it deep to him and getting him the ball. And that's where Baker balls. That's where Baker's making his money. 32% of Baker's yardage have come from Mike Evans. 50% of Baker's touchdowns are to Mike Evans. Mike Evans is making Baker Mayfield money. Baker Mayfield may get a starting job after this because of what he's doing in the clutch. Even though he's playing secondary, bottom of the barrel teams right now, he's doing enough to get a job. And that's a tough pill for me to swallow and a tough pill for me to go back on my word because things change. You can have an opinion on a player now and it can change even in 4 weeks. And Baker's doing enough to get a job somewhere else. So congratulations, Baker. That being said, I'm still starting Brock Purdy. I mean, Brock Purdy's a top 5 quarterback. I mean, come on. And the proof is there. If we had a full season of Burrow, Richardson, Rodgers, Watson, Jimmy G, Daniel Jones, because Daniel Jones gets the rushing yards, Kyler, Herbert, Cousins, where would Baker actually be? And that's where the fanatics can't comprehend and can't grasp and going around their head. And I get it because I do the same thing. We all use numbers to prove a point or to disprove a point. And I'm using these numbers to disprove a point that Baker shouldn't be quarterback 11, but he is. And that's just what it is, and you have to accept it. So still taking Purdy. I think everyone would at this point, right? Like Purdy, you can't just one bad game.
It's such a tough matchup because like you talked about early, is that Baker Mayfield is QB2 over the last couple of weeks, whereas Brock Purdy had a tough game. So that does make it tough. But yeah, I hate to say it, but like I'm gonna have to go Brock Purdy here. I mean, it's just.
Thanks for listening. Be sure to like and subscribe wherever you watch or listen to podcasts. Follow on X and Instagram at OUSFFPOD. We'll be back next week for more ways to win your league.